I do not fear the strike. I invite it, because the moment you raise your hand, I already see how you will fall. In your aggression, you reveal everything. In your desire to win quickly, you show me the path to defeat you slowly. I was taught to watch the fist long before it forms, to read the breath, not the blade. Timing is not just the measure of movement, it is the wisdom of stillness before impact. So when I let you strike first, it is not surrender, it is design. It is the opening I gave you because I already knew what came next. You believe power is in the first move, but war is not a game of muscle. It is a mirror. You strike, and I study. You lunge, and I listen. You reveal your reach, your rhythm, your recklessness. And while you think you are overwhelming me, I am outlining you, drawing the shape of your weakness. With every step, you rush forward. The wind does not fight the mountain. It circles, it studies, it returns. In the same way, I move around force, not through it. When you come for me, I do not meet you head-on. I let you pass through the space I cleared just for your ego, and then I close it behind you. You call it passive. I call it preparation. You call it weakness. I call it watching the storm from higher ground. There is a reason rivers bend, a reason wolves wait, a reason the arrow is pulled back before it flies forward. Nothing strong begins by attacking, it begins by absorbing. You have been taught to win by striking first. I win by making you think you should. When the impatient move, they believe speed is a strength, but time is the weapon of the disciplined. I wait, not because I hesitate, but because I want you to expose everything before I commit anything. I want your fire to burn out in the open. I want your plan to unfold in front of my stillness. Because the longer I watch, the deeper I see. Every movement you make tells me where your weight rests. Every pause tells me where your mind hides. Every breath tells me when you're pretending to be calm but are preparing to erupt. And every time you move, I need to move less. Because you are exhausting yourself on air while I sharpen my understanding in silence. A single well-placed counterstrike destroys 100 reckless charges. That is not poetry. That is physics. Most men lose because they act from emotion. They are provoked, insulted, pushed. And when they finally strike, it is not from clarity, but from heat. They fight to defend their pride, not their position. And that is why they fall. Not because they were weak, but because they were reactive. I am never reactive. I am responsive. The battlefield belongs to the one who sees it unfold before it begins. The one who makes space instead of noise. The one who understands that letting you strike first is not delay, it is alignment. It is giving your chaos just enough room to collapse into its own pattern. And once I see that pattern, I do not need to overpower you. I only need to redirect what you've already set in motion. You will not hear me raise my voice. You will not see me flinch, because the moment you step forward, I have already stepped beyond you. I do not meet strength with strength. I meet it with strategy, and I win by letting you strike first. You strike with confidence, but I respond with clarity. That is why you fail. Each blow you deliver is loud, decisive, certain, but it is also rushed, naked, and hungry. You want the victory now. You want me broken quickly. You want to prove your power in a single move. But I have no interest in rushing. I do not need to prove anything. I only need to see clearly, wait patiently, and choose precisely. When you swing first, I do not resist, I observe. When your sword cuts the air, I measure the arc. When your foot lands, I read the weight. When your voice rises, I measure how close you are to fear. That is the first difference between us. You enter battle hoping it ends quickly. I enter battle already knowing how it ends. And that ending is not decided by whose blade is sharper. It is decided by who sees the whole battlefield, while the other is focused on a single target. You strike the body, I strike the rhythm. You fight for domination, I fight for definition. And so your first strike, no matter how powerful, is the beginning of your unraveling, because it is the moment you stop thinking and start reacting. The disciplined warrior uses the enemy's desire as leverage. Your eagerness becomes my fulcrum. You press forward, and I step aside. You overextend, and I step within. You tire yourself, and I remain untouched. My energy is preserved, while yours bleeds with every unnecessary movement. I do not need to counter you with force. I only need to guide you toward collapse by using your force against itself. The greatest trap is not the one you see. It's the one you walk into willingly, believing it was your own idea. That is how I win. I make you think you've gained ground. I make you feel momentum. I give you what you want, not because I cannot stop you, but because you are easier to conquer when you believe you are winning. That is how kingdoms fall. That is how armies break. That is how minds unravel, not by sudden destruction, but by slow overconfidence. You are loud in your entry. I am quiet in my return. You want the world to watch your victory. I want the world to forget I was even there. Victory is not a moment. It is a process. It begins long before the strike, and it ends long after the crowd forgets who threw the first blow. So let them cheer your charge. Let them praise your power. Let them believe the war is yours because you moved first. Because while they watch your sword flash, I will be watching your guard fall. And by the time your second strike lands, I will no longer be where you aimed. I will already be behind you, unseen, unshaken, and prepared. It is not strength that wins battles. It is awareness. It is patience. It is the ability to wait for the perfect moment and strike where it counts, not where it's loudest. You roar, I whisper. You lunge, I step. You fall, I remain. Because I do not fight to be seen. I fight to end the fight before it truly begins. I am not moved by your anger. I am not rushed by your noise. I am not shaken by your speed. Because I know that striking first is not the same as striking last. I know that noise fades, but precision endures. There is something fatal hidden in the pride of the first strike. You believe you are dictating the tempo. You believe you are setting the rules. But what you don't see is that you have already entered the rhythm I composed, long before your weapon moved. I shape the battlefield so that your first move, no matter how explosive, is absorbed like wind into a valley. You believe you're making progress, but you're only moving where I've made space. I hollowed out the path for you to walk into, just wide enough for your ambition to echo, just narrow enough for your retreat to be impossible. You charge forward with emotion. I remain grounded in formation. That is the quiet difference between heat and structure. One burns quickly, the other endures the storm. The world has taught you to strike first as a sign of control. But I have learned that control is not in the first blow. It is in the breath that waits, in the calculation that watches, in the stillness that measures every angle of your chaos. I do not strike out of anger. I strike from conclusion. And that is why I do not need to strike often. You fear losing momentum. I fear losing vision. You fear falling behind. I fear misreading terrain. You believe that aggression proves strength. I know that restraint perfects it. So when you unleash your force, it may move mountains. But I am not the mountain. I am the terrain around it. I shift. I bend. I draw you down into the lowlands, where your height means nothing, where your reach becomes a burden, where your footing is uncertain and your assumptions are fatal. The longer you swing, the less you see. The louder you shout, the less you hear. The more you rush, the more space I have to build the end of your story. Do you know why the tiger crouches before it leaps? Why the archer holds his breath before he releases the string? Why the tide pulls back before the wave crashes forward? Because power is not in the constant push. Power is in the compression of patience, in the understanding that timing is not a luxury, it is the strategy. But most will never understand this. They are too attached to noise, too addicted to applause, too afraid of silence where real decisions are made. And so I let you move first, not because I need you to fail, but because I need you to declare yourself. In every war, whether on the battlefield, in the market, or in the mind, the first to reveal their pattern loses the power of mystery. The moment you step forward, you become visible, you become calculable, you become readable. And that is when I begin to win, not by overpowering you, but by outseeing you. You think strength is measured in effort? I measure it in efficiency. You believe dominance comes from visibility. I know it comes from influence, the kind that reshapes you without you realizing it. That is the art of letting you strike first. I make your decision feel voluntary. I draw your blade with no resistance. I create the illusion of advantage so complete that you overextend, overcommit, and eventually overreach. And then the fall is not something I caused. It is something you prepared. You never realized the rope around your neck was built from your own momentum. That is the silent brilliance of the unseen general, the one who leaves no trace but shapes every move, the one who disappears from the center but is present in every collapse, the one who never needs to fight for control because he never gave it away in the first place. You fight for victory. I wait for it to ripen, and while you exhaust yourself with swings and steps, I breathe once and place one move that ends it all. Because when you strike first, you spend energy, you lock into position, you burn the element of surprise, you show me your plan. But when I move, it is with the weight of all your mistakes built into my momentum. That is why I strike after you, not because I am slower, but because I am already beyond. Let the world admire your courage. Let them name you bold. Let them crown you champion of initiative. And let them weep when they realize you never truly held the battlefield, only the illusion of it. The first to act feels in control, but true control belongs to the one who decides how long to wait and where to strike when all your energy is gone. You may throw 1,000 punches, but it only takes me one if it is placed where you forgot to guard. I wait, not to be late, but to be exact. You shout, you advance, you command, and I remain still, not from fear, but from understanding, because everything you do gives me more power, not less. So strike if you must. Every move you make builds the outline of your defeat, and I am drawing the final stroke in silence. There is a peculiar stillness I carry into battle. It is not hesitation. It is not doubt. It is calculation, so exact that even breath becomes a tool. Even time bends to my will. While others rush to move, I study the moment. I take it apart. I break it into invisible pieces and watch which one you step on first. I have no need to resist you, because resistance reveals presence. I have no desire to interrupt you, because interruption admits urgency. I simply let you come. I let you swing. I let you declare everything: your power, your reach, your fear, your limit. Most men enter conflict hoping to erase the opponent. I enter to read him like a scroll. Because the more you show me, the less I need to risk. Every war has two battles, the one of movement and the one of mind. The first is noisy, explosions, blood, collapse. But the second is silent, subtle, and far more decisive. By the time you throw your second strike, I already know your third. You are too busy watching me. I am watching the space between your breath and your next mistake. This is not arrogance, it is discipline. A discipline forged in years of choosing clarity over impulse, silence over retaliation. The world rewards the bold, but the battlefield punishes the uncalculated, and the bold often confuse movement with mastery. They confuse aggression with advantage, but real mastery is invisible. It moves without drawing attention. It strikes without tension. It leaves no noise, only consequence. So I let you fill the air with noise. I let you own the tempo, and I let you believe the pressure is mine, because pressure only harms those who feel it. You act as though you are pressing me, but I do not respond to pressure. I redirect it. I let it roll off my formation and collapse under its own weight. The wall does not move when the storm howls. It absorbs, it remains, and the storm always passes. You mistake my patience for paralysis. You mistake my calm for weakness. But what you do not see is that in every inch you advance, you are giving me something. You are revealing your pace, your pattern, your preferences. You are showing me how many moves you can make before your breath shortens, before your confidence becomes calculation, before your boldness begins to wonder if I've been waiting for something you're not ready for. And I am. I am always waiting for that one moment, the moment when your need to finish becomes your greatest liability, when your confidence outruns your clarity, when your force forgets to defend itself. And that is when I move. It is never grand, it is never loud, but it is always final. Because I do not fight to win the crowd. I fight to end the war. A single, deliberate move, placed at the point where your balance fails, is more powerful than 100 desperate strikes. And that move was earned by letting you go first, letting you declare yourself, letting you overextend in the false comfort of apparent control. You see, when you strike first, you must be right. But when I strike second, I only need you to be wrong once. That is the price of initiative in war. It demands perfection. Every blow you throw early, every ground you take quickly, every assumption you make without confirmation, each becomes a brick in the wall I will eventually collapse on top of you. And that wall is built by your own hands. I am not fighting you. I am letting you build your own end. The swordsman who lunges first must reach further, reveal more, risk more. And if he misses, he is vulnerable before he can recover. But the one who receives the strike and waits, he sees everything in that moment of extension. He sees the ribs exposed, the eyes too focused, the next step already predicted. And when he moves, it is not to strike back. It is to finish what was never wisely begun. So I do not stop you. I do not interrupt you. I let you move as much as you need to reveal who you are. I give you all the space you think you've taken, and I watch you fill it until there is nowhere left to go. And then I move, not against you, but through the void you created. Because you were so focused on pressing forward, you never saw how far you drifted from protection, from awareness, from balance. And it takes only one quiet move, placed in perfect silence, to end what noise could never secure. You may have been first, but I am the one who remained unseen until it mattered most. There is a kind of power that never enters the spotlight, a strength so precise it does not need to announce itself. That is the kind of power I wield. Not the kind that breaks doors down, but the kind that knows which hinge to remove so the door collapses by itself. You mistake timing for hesitation, but hesitation is fear dressed in confusion. Timing is clarity held in discipline. I do not delay because I lack conviction. I delay because I know the value of a move diminishes the moment it is wasted on reaction. So I store my energy while you spend yours. I conserve my silence while you burn through your voice. And by the time you begin to wonder why I haven't fallen, I've already begun to see the cracks forming behind your posture. You strike again and again, louder each time, thinking sound will break strategy. But your voice does not frighten me. Your movements do not disturb me. Because I am not fighting for validation. I am fighting for conclusion. You seek immediate reward. I seek finality. That's why I let you swing first. It is not a gamble. It is a guarantee that in trying to destroy me quickly, you will create the very position I need to end this fully. All your noise builds a tower too tall to support itself. I do not need to shake it. I only need to step aside when it falls. Your rhythm becomes predictable. Your pattern becomes a prophecy. And your urgency becomes a cage you cannot escape from. Every step forward narrows your options. Every confident lunge shortens your arc of return. And in that compression, I find my opportunity, not to resist, but to release everything I've stored in stillness. The counterstrike does not come from the body. It comes from the mind that has been watching you build your undoing. It comes from the breath that has waited, the stance that has not shifted, the will that has remained calm as your storm passed over. Because while you believed motion was control, I knew control was knowing when not to move. There is an old truth I learned long ago. The one who controls the frame controls the fight. And you, in your first strike, have already agreed to fight inside the frame I chose. You stepped into my silence. You danced in the space I made. You moved with confidence inside walls you never questioned. I don't need to fight you directly. I only need to guide your choices. And when you only have the choices I've left for you, you've already lost. Let that sit for a moment. Every time you act first, without full sight, without understanding my structure, without noticing where the terrain dips and where it swallows, you enter a theater you do not control. You believe it's a duel, but you're performing, and I am directing. The worst kind of defeat is not the one delivered by a stronger enemy. It's the one you walk into believing you were in control. The one where your power seemed enough until you realized it had been redirected, reshaped, and absorbed into the very system that would collapse you. You think I retreat when I let you move first, but I am not retreating. I am drawing you forward into consequence, into fatigue, into exposure, into clarity, not mine, but yours. Because when you finally see how far you've come, you will also see that there's no ground beneath your next step. That's where the end begins. Not with a roar, not with an explosion, but with a single quiet step, mine, placed where your last move cannot recover. No resistance, no contest, no struggle, just inevitability, and you will wonder how it happened. How you, the bold one, the fast one, the first to strike, ended up behind, exhausted, cornered. But by then, it will be too late. Not because I moved faster, but because I waited longer, with purpose, with control, with the kind of vision that doesn't panic when provoked. And while you were striking, I was sealing the outcome. That is why the first move means nothing if it isn't backed by full awareness. That is why the strongest strike fails when it lands outside of strategy. And that is why I let you strike first. Not because I fear you, but because I need to know what you're willing to sacrifice to feel powerful. Because in that sacrifice, you tell me who you really are. And I never strike until I know exactly what that means. You see, the battlefield is not won in the flash of a blade or the echo of a gunshot. It is won in the quiet calculations made before the sound. Long before steel touches skin, the outcome has already unfolded in the choice of position, in the reading of intent, in the discipline to wait. Every warrior wants to believe that the fight begins when swords are drawn, but the seasoned general knows the fight begins when one man moves and the other doesn't. That silence, that stillness, that refusal to be pulled into chaos, that is where I live. And it drives men like you mad. You cannot understand how I do not respond to your noise, how I do not rise to your bait, how I let you shout, swing, press, posture, and remain unmoved. Because you were raised to believe that power must be loud, that control must be visible, that action is always superior to stillness. But I know better. I know that every action leaves a trace, a footprint, a pressure on the terrain, an echo I can follow. Every movement you make tells me who you are and what you're afraid of. It shows me what you protect and what you're willing to lose. The speed of your strike shows me your urgency. The width of your stance shows me how much you fear falling. And once I know that, your strength becomes a map, not to your victory, but to your defeat. I do not need to overpower your charge. I only need to direct its weight toward what you haven't defended. Let you run full force into the space I've already hollowed out beneath you. That is the trap I lay, not with weapons, but with your own confidence. You strike to break me, but I am not where you expect me to be. I am beside your strike, beneath your strike, beyond your strike, because I already knew where it would land. You may think this is luck, but luck has no place here. Precision does, and precision is born from patience, from resisting the impulse to fight just because the enemy appears, from knowing that some victories are too loud to be sustainable and some silences are too sharp to be ignored. So I keep my sword sheathed while you wear yours out. I watch you swing wildly, at the air, at my shadow, at the ghost of the enemy you imagined I was. And each time you miss, I gain something you cannot recover, leverage. Because I have given you the illusion of control. And that illusion has led you far beyond the place where logic ends. You have become a creature of movement, no longer thinking, only reacting. And in that frenzy, you don't realize that I have seen the final opening. It always appears not in your failure but in your fatigue. You strike first, you move fast, you win early ground, but momentum is a drug, and you've become addicted. You think because you were first, you must also be right. Because you were fast, you must also be prepared. But time reveals all, and when you tire, and you will, your defenses drop just enough for me to see the invitation. That one exposed breath, that one habit you repeat when anxious, that one extra step you take that gives me the angle I waited for. You think the battle is yours because I haven't moved, but the only thing I'm waiting for is for you to give me the key. And when you do, I move once. Clean, final, undeniable. You were dancing for the world. I was preparing the conclusion. You spent your strength on every strike that didn't land, every word that didn't wound, every posture that didn't earn ground. And I used none of mine. I let your energy define the shape of your fall. That is the quiet advantage of restraint. It requires more than strength. It requires the strength to wait, and few men have that. Few men can watch their opponent rage without joining them. Few men can endure insult, threat, pressure, without mistaking noise for danger. Few men can see a path to strike and choose not to, because they know that the next one will matter more. But I have trained myself to wait for that next one, because I do not strike for sensation. I strike for closure, and when I do, you will not see it coming. You will only see that it was already too late. In the ancient texts, they speak of warriors who could disappear into the rhythm of the world, men who moved not against the current, but within it. who waited not because they were lost, but because they knew exactly where their enemy would drift. That is how I live. Not as a blade in motion, but as a force buried in stillness, rising only when the shape of the outcome is complete. You may think this is artful, even philosophical, but I do not speak in riddles. I speak in realities, because war, true war, is not a matter of who wants it more. It is a matter of who understands the terrain of the mind, the weight of time, and the illusion of dominance. Every time you swing first, you assume the battle begins at the moment of contact. But that moment is only a reflection. The real battle began the moment you decided to move. In that decision, you showed me everything: your pace, your patience, your discipline, or your lack of it. The angle of your strike, the timing of your aggression, the depth of your commitment, all of it laid bare before me like a map with no defenses. And I did not need to stop you. I only needed to let you keep moving. Because forward is not always forward. Sometimes it is collapse disguised as progress. You gained ground, yes, but not on me. You gained ground on the battlefield I abandoned, the terrain I left open for you to claim so that your appetite would grow too fast, too loud, too blind. And now you are deep inside a position you thought you conquered. But in truth, it is the position I created. It is the echo chamber of your own confidence, built with walls you never noticed me designing while you roared your way forward. This is why silence matters. This is why patience matters. Because silence builds space, and in space, you reveal what you cannot hide. When you are forced to move through noise, you become a creature of survival. When you are allowed to move through silence, you reveal your intentions, clearly, unconsciously, without defense. That is what I wait for. I do not want to fight the part of you that is alert. I want to fight the part of you that is sure, because that is the part that forgets to check its footing. That is the part that assumes I am behind, simply because I have not yet appeared. But I do not appear until the ending is written. I do not rise until the silence becomes unbearable, and the structure you thought was yours begins to bend beneath your own weight. That is when I move, not to destroy you, but to finish what you began with your impatience. I will not need a flurry of moves. I will not need to overpower your will. I will only need one action, delivered when you no longer remember how to adapt, when your body is committed, when your strategy is spent, when your mind is too far down the path of victory to see the edge ahead. You won't even realize the mistake, but not at first. You'll still be thinking in terms of forward, more, faster. You'll still be acting on the momentum of early success. And then, like a rope that tightens after too many steps forward, my silence will pull shut the trap. You never saw it. You never felt it. You walked into it freely. Because I let you. This is not cruelty. This is not deception for the sake of cleverness. This is the nature of precision. To do only what is required. To wait until the moment folds in on itself. To know that real power does not announce itself in bursts. It arrives in timing so exact, it becomes indistinguishable from inevitability. So I let you strike first, because I knew you would. Because I knew that in doing so, you would write your strategy in ink I could read before you finished the first page. Because I knew that your need to move would exceed your need to understand. And in war, that is all I need. Do you understand now? It was never about who could move faster, never about whose arm was stronger or whose voice reached farther. The outcome was never dictated by who struck first. It was determined by who understood why the other would strike first and what that revealed. You see, the world trains you to chase speed, to act before you're ready, to respond before you've assessed. But I have trained myself to resist that pull, to remain immovable until movement means checkmate. Because when I let you act first, I turn your ambition into architecture. Every step you take builds my strategy. Every blow you swing clears a path not toward me, but around me, deeper into terrain I have mapped long before you arrived. And the deeper you go, the louder you celebrate. You think you've pierced my defense. You think you've backed me down. You think the silence means I've yielded. But it was never surrender. It was scaffolding. It was patience coiling like a bowstring. It was vision folding inward until the moment you gave me your back. And you always give me your back. Because no warrior expects silence to hunt him. No aggressor expects the absence of resistance to be the very force that swallows him. You prepared for a fight, but I prepared for you. I built no wall to stop your charge. I simply shaped the ground so your steps would lead you where I needed them to. Because when you believe you are the hunter, you ignore the signs. You overlook the bend in the wind. You miss the stillness in the tall grass. You forget that the one who appears weak may not be hiding, he may be watching. That is the mistake of the impatient. That is the flaw of those who equate motion with advantage. They strike early to seize control, not realizing they have given up observation. And it is observation that defines the real field of power. I am not impressed by your fury. I am not moved by your pace. Because neither of them will outlast the silence I have trained to carry like a weapon. And in that silence, I study not just your moves, I study your identity. The way you hold your breath when uncertain, the way your feet shift when you're bluffing, the pause before you commit, the urgency in your strikes that betray your doubt. That is the moment I wait for, not to react, but to finalize. A fight is not won when you defeat your opponent's body. It is won when you dissolve his structure, when he realizes too late that every decision he made was predicted, permitted, and ultimately used against him. That is the cruelty of discipline. It doesn't just protect you. It makes your enemy your accomplice. And you, in all your might and momentum, never realized that you were doing my work for me, clearing the field, revealing your mind, delivering your final position with such loud confidence that you never heard the closing gate. That's how I win, not with strength, but with a silence so exact, it pulls truth from the noise. And when the truth is revealed, there is nothing left for you to do but fall. It is strange, isn't it, to realize that you were never truly in control, that what you believed to be dominance was merely permission, that the steps you thought you chose were carefully left open for you to take, because I needed you there, needed you moving, needed you visible. That is the final illusion of striking first, the illusion of initiative. You believed you were leading the dance, but the rhythm was mine. You believed your moves were unpredictable, but I had seen them 1,000 times in the eyes of men who could not sit with stillness. Because stillness demands self-mastery. To sit and watch your enemy approach without responding takes more strength than charging at him with a full heart and a drawn blade. To hold your breath while the noise grows louder, while the pressure builds, while the entire world screams for you to move, that is power. That is sovereignty. Most men are slaves to momentum, slaves to urgency. They cannot stand not knowing, not acting, not asserting. But I can. And in that space, I learn everything. You moved out of instinct. I waited out of discipline. And discipline never betrays. It does not swing too early. It does not reveal its form. It does not rush the kill. It waits until every door is closed, until every breath you take confirms the trap, until the final moment where you think you've won. And only then does it strike. Not to hurt, but to end. And when it ends, there is no struggle, no grand collapse, no cries of defeat, just quiet. You do not fall because I pushed you. You fall because you leaned too far forward, and I was no longer there to hold the illusion. And as you fall, you remember everything I didn't do. The counter-strike I didn't throw, the defense I didn't raise, the reaction you expected that never came. You remember the silence and finally understand it was never weakness. It was a mirror, and in it you saw not me, but yourself, unchecked, unrestrained, unready for war. That is the deepest victory, to make your enemy defeat himself. To be so unmoved that his own motion becomes his undoing. To be so still that his aggression circles back and strikes its source. And that is why I let you strike first. Because in that strike, you write your fate. I don't interrupt. I don't resist. I simply listen. And when the final line of your movement is written, I place a single mark at the end. And that mark is checkmate. No rage, no fight. Only the still hand of the one who waited. And in that stillness, you will see the one thing you tried to deny. That the outcome was never determined by who moved first. Only by who understood why movement matters at all. You tried to win with force. I won with design. That is the final truth most warriors never grasp. That the battlefield is not made of blood and fire. It is made of choices. The ground beneath us is not earth and stone. It is every decision you made without understanding its weight. Every time you struck first to feel powerful, you offered me another blueprint. And now, in the silence after your last move, you begin to feel it. The pressure is gone. The rhythm has stopped. There is no resistance because there is no need. Your energy has evaporated in 1,000 wasted motions. Your clarity drowned in the noise you created. And what stands before you is not the enemy you imagined, a brute of equal noise and fire, but something quieter, still, unshaken. You expected a war of swords, but what you received was a collapse of timing. You thought I would meet you in heat, but I had already written your ending in cold calculation. I did not block your path. I widened it. I did not stop your charge. I redirected it. And now, you see the truth you fought so hard to avoid. I never needed to defeat you. You did that on your own. I only needed to be the one who did not move when provoked. The one who watched, who endured, who calculated not just your body, but your behavior, not just your reach, but your rhythm. You played your hand first, loud and early, and while the world watched your boldness, I memorized your structure. That is how I win, not with force, not with fame, but with the invisible hand that holds the tempo of the war without ever needing to be seen. And now, here in the aftermath, in the quiet you can no longer ignore, you understand. The one who strikes first often writes the beginning, but the one who waits writes the ending.